Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Leslie, and today we are talking about one of my favorite things, and that is hobbies. I have a ton of hobbies. It is one of my biggest passions, so I am so excited to do this video and to tell you to not buy all the things. So if you like videos about budgeting and decluttering, definitely subscribe for more videos. So let's just jump into it. Like I said, I am someone who has had a ton of hobbies. I will actually put up on the screen some of the hobbies I've had over my 36 years on this planet, and I'm sure I have missed some because I have done so many things, and if I didn't do it, it's probably just because I didn't have the space. So I've been in many different hobby groups over the years and just have a lot of experience in this kind of thing. There are some things I've noticed that maybe can help you to not make some of the mistakes I did with doing some of these hobbies. Like I mentioned, I am 36, so I do remember what things were like before social media and how different it was when I was doing hobbies back then versus what it's like to do hobbies now. I'm not saying it's better or worse. In a lot of ways, it's way better because there's so many more resources now, but there are definitely some things that you'll need to watch out for. The biggest thing that I noticed when I started looking into hobbies more on social media is there tends to be people who do the hobby and then the aesthetic of the hobby. So this is one thing that's really big on like TikTok and Instagram. It's having these huge stashes of supplies, doing the hobby and making it perfect. Sorry, it's kind of loud. You may feel pressured to have these really beautifully curated stashes of supplies, have the nicest supplies, or just the supplies that everyone is buying. I know some things that everyone is getting, it's not even necessarily the best quality, it's just the best marketed, so it tends to be what everyone has. So these are things that can kind of get you into trouble, especially when it comes to your budget. I think the number one thing to keep in mind is that hobbies are meant for relaxation. They're meant for stress relief. They're meant for fun. So you really shouldn't feel pressure to be having all of the exact supplies that people are telling you to buy or to have like a beautiful, huge collection of things. I mean, you can do a lot with just a pencil and paper or just, a few markers or whatever your hobby happens to be. You can do a lot with just the most basic supplies for some of these hobbies. So it's really not necessary to have a social media ready collection of things. I mean, historically, hobbies were something that were generally more low cost because it's something that people used to do based on the supplies they had. So things they had in their family, like maybe playing an instrument, like your grandfather played a certain instrument, so then it was passed to you and now you're playing it. Or you have some paper and pencils laying around, so you just pick it up and start doodling. I mean, hobbies started as something that were really a budget-friendly option considering it was usually stuff you had lying around. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you're on a really tight budget and looking for hobbies. I will have a video about really low-cost hobbies and activities that you can do, so I'll have more specific options for you in another video, so just keep an eye out for that. So we've definitely come a long way from hobbies being something that is very low cost based on your materials that you already have. It's definitely escalated into something where you need to go out and buy things. So it's become, I'm so sorry if you hear that in the background, they're doing construction outside, but it's become something where you really need to buy things, and that is not the goal of hobbies. So one of my hobbies is crochet and also knitting, which they both take yarn. I'm very familiar with the saying that crocheting or knitting and buying yarn are two separate hobbies, and I just absolutely have to agree with that because it is so easy to build up your stash of yarn without actually using all of it, and that's one thing that got me into trouble. So I'm actually on a yarn buying ban this year because I have like 3 big boxes of yarn and some drawers. I just have way too much, so I am making myself use all my yarn before I buy more, which is totally fine considering I don't even have time to crochet or knit anymore, so I go through yarn very slowly and I don't need to be buying it anyway. So it is perfectly fine to try a new hobby that you found on TikTok or wherever else. That's actually a really great way to find new fun things to do. It's how I've found many hobbies and how I've gotten started on them. But you need to find some kind of resource or video where you can look up very beginner supplies, the basics that you need to do that hobby, so that you're not going out and buying things that are super expensive or take up a whole lot of space when you really don't need it for your hobby. Remember, sorry, my cat's over here. So just keep in mind that there is so much marketing on social media that it's a good chance that some of the products you're seeing are probably just things that are being marketed to you and not even necessarily the best products for the job. It's kind of funny how, so one example is coloring or drawing with markers. Alcohol markers are very popular, and one of the more popular brands I see is actually Ohuhu, and it's kind of funny because I don't want to call them low grade, but they're not professional grade. So normally I would expect to see something like Copic. Copic markers are very expensive, very professional grade, top tier, but I think I actually see less of those than the Ohuhu markers. And maybe it is because they're more affordable, more people can buy them, but I found that really interesting. Definitely do a little more research outside of whatever videos you're seeing. If there is a product you're seeing over and over, it's worth investigating if that's really what you need. Another reason that people may have really expensive setups, so say someone does have a bunch of those expensive Copic markers, they are probably a professional, or at the very least they make money from their social media, so they're able to afford those top tier tools. Another thing that I've seen a lot of is starter kits, and I have really mixed feelings on starter kits because it is a good way to kind of dip your toes into a new hobby. I know crochet has those Woobles kits, which I'm not a huge fan of, to be honest, but I don't really like that kind of crochet. I don't really like making amigurumi, that's what it's called. Sorry, my cat is shaking the camera now. So I don't really like making those little plushies. It's actually kind of funny that those got so popular because I find that kind of crochet really difficult. So I'm surprised people would do that for a beginner project. But anyway, the whole point is those kits are very, very expensive for what's in them. I think they run like $35 or so. I haven't really looked into them that closely, but I think it's around $35. And the materials that are in there are probably maybe $10, if even that, and you would have leftover yarn. So be aware of that if you're looking at starter kits. Like I said, I'm not telling you not to buy those because it may be the easiest way to get your hands on something to just try. I know for me, when I started cross-stitching, I bought a cross-stitch kit because it's the easiest way to jump into something like that. So just compare prices, just maybe watch some videos, see if a starter kit is really what you need. Similar to that, you can usually get started with very few materials. So using the markers again as an example, you may just need a handful of markers. You don't need a collection of like 300 markers to get started with something like that. You can just have a few, see if you like it. If you decide that's a hobby you want to keep going with, then you can always buy more. And I have so much sympathy for that kind of thing because as someone who has done so many hobbies, can you tell I have ADHD? Because I rotate hobbies so much. So when I first get started with a hobby, I just jump in. I get so obsessed with it. I want to buy everything. I want to buy the best quality. It takes over my life. The only good thing I can say is that I do stick with hobbies for like a good couple of years before I move on. So it's not like I'm moving on like every couple of months, and I do tend to come back to hobbies, but that almost makes it more difficult because I'm like, hey, I know I'm probably going to stick with this a while, so I definitely want all the best expensive things that I can buy. But I've learned over the years, one thing that keeps me kind of grounded is the fact that I know I don't have time to do all the hobbies I want to do because there are just so many things that I'm interested in. So I have to figure out which hobby I am most interested in, so I don't want to be going all out on everything I want to do because I'm probably not going to have time to do it anyway. Be realistic about that kind of thing, especially if you're a busy person like me. Think if you actually have time to do some of these hobbies, because the last thing you want to do is buy all of this stuff, have a really nice collection, maybe you even post it on social media yourself, and then it turns out you don't even have time to do the hobby. That would be really disappointing. Another thing that social media has done when it comes to hobbies that I really felt when I first jumped on Instagram in particular, it is the pressure to do everything perfect. So whenever you see people's art collections or videos of them making art, you're seeing the best of what they can do. They're generally not going to show you all of their mistakes, all of the things they did in the beginning, because everyone starts somewhere. So you're going to start at the beginning, you're going to get better. So you're seeing them at the end when they're actually really, really good. So don't feel so much pressure to do everything perfect. It's totally fine to make mistakes. It's fine to use cheap supplies that may not look quite as good. Don't feel that kind of pressure because it can really make your hobby not as fun and actually quite stressful. I can tell you from my own experience. So my other channel is a macrame channel where I do macrame tutorials, and I have an Etsy shop where I sell macrame pieces. And you may look at this stuff and be like, wow, like that's really good, I'm gonna try macrame, and then you do it and then your piece is all wonky and just doesn't look like what I did in the tutorial. That is to be expected. If it looks exactly the way I did it, then you are just amazing, because that is not normal. I've seen so many pictures of people who are beginners where things aren't like quite perfect, but they absolutely love the tutorial and it still looks pretty good anyway. I mean, just because it's not super perfect doesn't mean it's bad. It sometimes gives it character. I mean, I've seen ones that I almost like better than mine just because they were a little wonky, and I like that. I've also noticed this sort of thing with hobbies that aren't necessarily creative hobbies. So like not so much the drawing and painting kind of thing, but books. I remember when I discovered Book Talk, oh my gosh, at first I was so excited that reading was starting to become trendy because I absolutely love reading. I read literally 100 books a year, and I was just so excited to see other people jumping into this hobby. But when I got into it a little more, I sort of saw the dark side of Book Talk. And I mean, there are several things really. The fact that maybe 20 books keep getting repeated. You see the same titles over and over. You feel pressure to read more books because there are people on there. I thought I was crazy for reading 100 books a year. These people are reading like 20 books a month. So it can make you feel pressure to read more, to call yourself a reader. And that's just not true at all. I mean, it's completely fine if you just read one book a month. I read 100 because I want to, not because I have to. I mean, I do set reading goals. There was one year where I set my reading goal for 100 books and I only made it to 96. And I knew I could have gotten that extra 4 books easily, but I just wasn't in the mood to read more. I mean, it was the holidays, things were crazy. I didn't want to fill my time. I didn't want to stress over reading when it was just my hobby for fun, to relax. So I just left it at 96 books for that year. It sucks I was so close to my goal, but it's really not that serious. Whatever hobby you're doing, do it because you want to. Don't make it stressful for yourself. There's so many other sources of stress in our lives. Your hobby does not need to be one. So I mentioned that I have my Etsy shop and then my other channel for macrame. And this leads into the next thing, which is another pressure to monetize your hobbies. This is one that I feel so hard, and it doesn't help that other people encourage me because they know that I've monetized several of my hobbies. My macrame shop, it actually started as a cross stitch shop. So I was doing cross stitch. I have a second Etsy shop where I do digital stuff. So I do embroidery patterns, hand lettering worksheets, just like digital coloring books. I have a few things on there. So I have actually monetized several of my hobbies over the years. And because people have seen that, whenever I have a new hobby, they encourage me to monetize it. And in the past, as you can tell, I've listened many times. And even though it did work out, it made the hobby less fun. Like macrame, for example, I never macrame for fun anymore. I absolutely appreciate all of my macrame orders. I love doing the Etsy stuff. I'm so glad that people took to my macrame channel and watched it, but it really takes the fun out of it when it becomes work. So every time I was going to make something macrame related, I was either going to put it on Etsy or make a tutorial for it. I just never did it for myself anymore. So that's when I kind of moved on to other stuff. But most recently, the most recent hobby I've tried is knitting, and I absolutely love knitting. And of course, everyone was like, hey, you should sell your knitting. And I'm like, no, there is no way I am monetizing this one. This one is for me. I want it to be relaxing. I don't want to be thinking about, oh, I need to learn how to make patterns, because making patterns is not easy, especially with like crochet and knitting and stuff like that. So I don't want to feel any kind of pressure to be super creative and make things. I want to just follow a pattern, do the motions, and make something for myself. So if you are like me and you struggle with feeling pressured to monetize what you're doing, don't even worry about it. It is totally fine and very healthy to have your own hobbies that you don't monetize. I know other people will really pressure you, but they don't understand how much work goes into handmade things, and then the market price tends to not entirely cover your labor anyway. So it's just not worth it in so many ways. I mean, I don't want to say it's not worth it because obviously I did it. So in some cases it is, but just my point is be careful and just really think about that. And make sure you have a way to relax. Like I said, I will make another video with some of the cheaper ways to get into hobbies. I really just wanted to make this video to kind of talk about some of the pressures you can feel that are really intensified by social media, because I know I felt it. And like I said, I just remember the difference from when I wasn't on social media at all versus now. It's so hard because everything you see on there is just so perfect. You see so many beautiful things. You want that. You want to copy that in your own life, but I don't think it's feasible for everyone to do that kind of thing. It's not budget friendly. You're gonna have so much clutter if you move on from that hobby. It's like I said, that's something that I've definitely dealt with. So just be mindful of that. I mean, I definitely watch hobby videos and things like that sometimes, scroll through Instagram, and I love seeing what other people make, but I have luckily gotten to the point where I don't feel the need to recreate everything, to one up people and try to make something better or to monetize all of it. And I just want you to have that stress taken from you as well. So let me know, are you someone like me who has a ton of hobbies and you really have to reel it in? Are you someone who has stuck to one thing for most of your life? That really impresses me. If there's someone who has stuck with like one main hobby and has gotten really crazy good at it, that always blows my mind, because I know I always end up getting bored of hobbies in a couple years. Like I said, I do tend to circle back sometimes, but I find it so impressive when people have done something for a long time. Just remember that hobbies are for you. They don't have to be perfect. You don't even have to show them to anyone else. I know there's tons of things I've done that I haven't put on display. So if you like this video, just give it a thumbs up, drop me a comment, make sure you subscribe. And like I said, I will be working on that other video for affordable, cheap hobbies and activities. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.